Okay, in this video I'm going to be looking at your 6 design principles memory mnemonic device designs. Excuse me. And I'm going to be having you revisit these in the final project. You'll have more than one option, but one option is going to be to turn your 6 design principles mnemonic into a trifold brochure. It'll be a handy reference for you as a guide to not only remember the names but also what they are and what they mean and how to apply them. I think it's really important when talking about design that you bring these up as part of an argument. You know, you can't just say it's my opinion when you're talking about designs. And as marketers, because design, graphic design is such an integral part of marketing, you're going to be having to talk about it. You know, either looking at other people, what other people are doing or have done, offering constructive criticism, or talking about what you've done, or to recommend what someone else might should do. Where I work, it's constantly doing design edits, and sometimes the junior bankers who give us edits to do, their seniors don't really give them a reason for why they don't like something. They just put their thumb up or their thumb down and say, no, don't like it, yes, I like it, and it's very frustrating, and I can see it. We'll shake our heads and go, no, I think this is better. They just don't understand. So I mean, it gives yourself an air of authority when you talk about designs in terms of actual principles and relate them to what you're looking at. Okay, and also it's hard to do that if you don't remember the names. So hopefully that by doing this project and then or doing this assignment and then later doing a project which emphasizes the names, how to remember the names and also what they mean, it brings you into the world of marketing with a leg up. Okay, so first one by Bill Mazer, 6 design principles. I'm gonna read all these first and then talk about them. Okay, Bill is a copywriter, so he did what copywriters do best, use a minimum amount of language to express the meaning. Now he talked about what the mnemonic images do in terms of each design principle, as opposed to a narrative about why he picked those particular design graphics, or how those in particular would be representative of some kind of place. So contrast. Striking two-tone message is powered by realistic illustration style and an uncluttered, clean look. And that's looks like possibly a cover. Refugees are welcome back, a very apropos topic nowadays, and some of the controversy in the United States about not wanting to accept refugees. And contrast is used extremely well. The white text on top is repeated in the bottom 2/3 with the graphic image, and then the background is very dark, so the light headline against the dark background does really offer a nice clean look, which draws your eyes immediately to not only the headline but the striking graphic below the headline. Emphasis. Headline pops nicely from out of focus background to add impact and clarity. Again, that is true. Now the white, or sometimes called reversed headline, big, bold, and it's in front of the dark part of the background. If they would have made the headline more towards the top of the page and left it white, it would have been a lot more hard to read. So again, that does add impact and clarity because of the difference, the contrast in light and dark. So this is an example where contrast relates to emphasis. And also the placement of the headline directly in the middle, like that, into the dark area. Okay, draws your eyes into the headline. And again, as Bill has stated, the background is like a blurred out of focus, where the headline is a nice clean font, all caps, and nice big and bold. Okay, flow, perfect blend of art and copy, paid off with call to action and brand theme, but it's one of the lightest parts of the overall graphic is the open mouth. That's where the light seems to be shining the most and reflecting, and so that adds a contrast and an emphasis to the open mouth, because our eyes flow immediately to that area, and because our eyes sort of follow immediately to that area, the headline copy is tucked just right next to it like that, and even though it's small, we want to read it because all around the headline is so dark, it's just calling for us to read that. We're intrigued so much that we want to go in closer, assuming this is a poster, excuse me, and read that. Okay. So yeah, good idea for flow. It's a graphic flow where contrast creates emphasis, which draws your eyes into the snake. So that's where contrast and emphasis leads to flow, but it also leads to verbal flow because of the placement of the text right next to the mouth, and also the contrast of the white text to the large black background is an idea that contrast relates to flow as well. Okay, so good. Balance. Left and right for perfect symmetry. Very symmetrically balanced, and it's also balanced in terms of light and dark because the top and bottom, the bottom third and the very top of the design is almost all black, and then a big chunk of the middle section is very light, and that's balanced by having light over the black areas as well. So you see the idea of just delicately balancing just enough light and just enough dark so it seems not only symmetrical aligned, but it seems symmetrical in terms of light and dark, or heavy and light areas. Okay, and then finally repetition. Oh, I'm sorry, there's two more. Alignment. Text layout choices abound. Now here he showed different alignment schemes, and in this he showed a center alignment, a left alignment, right alignment, and a justified alignment. And it looks like he used these images of banners to show that. And then finally repetition. With lively style, not a bore. Now this is an example of a pure graphic repetition. There's nothing being repeated as far as text, but what is being repeated is these figurative elements, which appear to be either dancing, playing musical instruments, or doing some sort of sword practice or something like that. But my guess is it's some sort of nod to a dance. Okay, and because that's repeated, it gives the idea of a room full of people all engaging in an activity. Okay, and that's really also repeated in the way that the composition is broken into shapes that are just connected like a puzzle into each other. So the figures themselves are really just rectangles and circles and shapes themselves, and that's repeated all around. Okay, so the idea that a foreground background is almost annihilated, not completely, but it's subjugated to an overall composition where shapes, basic geometric shapes, are repeated to make the figure shapes themselves. Okay, so it's very clever. So, and I like that this overall design is very symmetrical. It's very professional that way. Like you thought it through, you aligned things very well. Okay, good alignment and balance. It looks like the word contrast and the word balance are aligned bottom, and the same with flow and emphasis and alignment and repetition. Again, doing things like that is very important, because anybody could do that. Even if you don't have a lot of experience or knowledge of design, you can do that. Just make sure that things are logically aligned. If you're going to line up things, just do it in a way that you can just make an argument for. You're aligning the text to each other on the bottom of the text. Okay, it does look like you have a more margin on the right side of the balance graphic than you do on the left side of the contrast graphic. and also the space between the four graphics on the top isn't even, you know. Another thing you can do to sort of make things appear more professional is crop. So you've got four rectangles on top that are basically the same size or very close to the same size. I would just crop the ones that are fatter to be the exact same size. So make them all the same height, and then just do a crop where you're just taking off a little bit on the outside. I do that constantly where I work, and you're probably not going to be losing too much of the composition in this case where it's going to suffer, you know. So I would just do that to make it look like they're just absolutely the perfect shape, and that way you're not giving any more emphasis to the bigger ones than the smaller ones, you know, because sometimes when you're aligning pictures or graphics in a row like that with captions underneath, you know, you want them to be the exact same size so that you're not confusing anybody into thinking one is more important than the other. Okay, and it just gives it an air of professionality. I love that you have the same space between the caption and the graphics on most of these. It looks like there might be a little more between the contrast and the graphic, although that may be because the bottom is so light of the refugees graphic. One trick too, when you have a graphic like the refugees that has a lot of white bleeding off the bottom and the bottom right and left like that, one trick is that you do a thin outline, like a 1-point black outline, and that way you're just defining what the composition is more accurately, and that would also define what the margin is between the caption and the refugee graphic. Okay, and you could do the same thing with the alignment graphic. Make a box around the four banners in alignment so that it's the exact same size as the repetition. You know what I mean? So that they appear to be the same size. It creates a unity of alignment that looks professional. Okay. And that way also you'd bring the alignment caption down a little bit, and that would perfectly align with repetition. It's a little bit high now as far as left to right alignment. One thing I would do is I would bring 6 design principles, the text up more. You have plenty of room for tighter margins on the top and bottom. So I would make the 6 design principles text up higher, and you could probably make that a little bigger or track it so it goes left to right a little bit more. And I would probably, and I'm going to say this for a lot of these probably, don't forget about color. I wouldn't try not to default to black always. There'll be cases where it's a design standard in the books you're using where headlines must be black, but if you can do anything you want, I mean, if it's a little more openly defined, color is your friend. So I would maybe bring some of the overall colors that you see in the graphics into the headline text, or maybe each letter could be a different color, like the S could be the blue, the I could be one of the other colors, the X could be another color. You know what I mean? Just you're unifying your graphic images to the headline that way even more so. I would also lead or line spacing. I would bring more line spacing into the contrast through repetition text so that it's a little more easy to read, and that's flow. I think they need a little more space between them, line spacing. Okay, and that's also called leading. They used to use chunks of lead, little bars of lead when typeface was done by hand, and that would create more space between lines of text. Okay. In little chunks of copy like this, I don't think periods are necessarily needed either. I suppose it's an individual thing, but even if it's a perfect sentence, period's just not needed. I mean, just an aside. And one last thing, I would also repeat colors of the graphic into the words in your body copy. In other words, you've got contrast through repetition bolded like that, which is really good because your eyes can quickly track. And as a copywriter, I'm sure you know that. But you could even make that connection stronger by making the word contrast blue, for example, making the emphasis maybe that light blue or a dark orange color like in the leaves. You can make the word flow like a dark green like the snake. Balance could be like a blue of the looper graphic, in that background, like the light. You know what I'm saying? So like, just if you introduce that color, you're even more reinforcing that each one of these words belongs to each one of these graphics, okay? But nice job. Alright, 6 Design Principles by Shana Mickelson. My memory mnemonic consists of a group of pictures which pop into my mind when I think of the 6 design principles. When I think of contrast, I think of black and white with a pop of color. The polka dots represent repetition. The railroad tracks just show the alignment of a set of tracks where everything aligns with each other horizontally and vertically. The bullseye will show a great example of emphasis. Your eye is led to that middle dot effortlessly. I love windmills, and when I think of flow, I think of a light breeze. The windmills not only make a breeze, but the flow of the planks are very calming, just like the flow of a picture. Lastly, the scale is what comes to mind when I think of balance. You need the perfect weight of items to create a nice balance. Okay, again, one thing I would recommend in your body copy, when the body, in a case like this, when the body copy has little words that are little punch words, and those words relate to a graphic, and I know they're not captions, but I would create emphasis by contrast. You know, you could have made them bold like the previous student did. I would probably make them bold and maybe a color, again repeating the color in the graphic into that word, okay? I think this is a case where you could have used justified text, because it looks like you're wanting to create very rectangular groups of graphics, and you know, because there's really not a lot of space on the left justified right flush, or excuse me, you've got a left justified block of text in your body copy with the right side ragged, but you see on the right side that is ragged, you know, it looks like it wants to be aligned to the right margin, you know. So I would probably picked a justified text alignment scheme. And also, if you're going to do a left alignment right ragged like this, you probably don't want one word at the end of the paragraph like that. That's called an orphan. So what you can do is maybe make the font size, you know, a half point smaller, a half point bigger, or you can just drag the text box to the left and right just slightly until that's more even. It'll create more of a rectangle, okay, and that's going to create more sense of repetition, that you're repeating rectangle shapes. And I'm not crazy about that open space on the bottom left like that. You got plenty of space there, so I would have spread out your main graphics all the way to the bottom, and that would have made more of an overall rectangle alignment scheme, okay, where the margins all the way around are filled, you know, that are touched by all the graphic elements. You can move the 6 design principles up a little bit higher, create like a more even margins, and I would you know, bring your graphics all the way down and make the captions next to the graphics a lot bigger. You know, those should be able to be emphasized more. Those should pop even more. I hate to use the word pop, excuse me for that, but they should be emphasized even more. Again, you could probably bring more color into the captions that relate to the graphic, and I would probably bring some color into the 6 design principles text as well, that relate to the colors going on in the graphics even more, you know. You remember, you want to relate your main headline with your main graphic. In this case, your main graphic is a series of pictures and illustrations, okay? So either, you know, different colors, or just pick one color that seems most important somehow. You know, this might be minor, but I probably would have centered the byline to a you know, a middle centered above the copy. You know what I'm saying? Like right now you've got it looks like it's flush to the right margin, but nothing else is flush to the right margin. The headline is centered, and the body copy, it looks like it's doesn't quite touch the margin, okay, in the same way. So, you know, either make the body copy completely justified where it's touching the right margin and the byline is, or you can simply center the byline on top of the body copy. You could have also made the body copy a centered text alignment, and that probably would have looked really nice too, you know. Okay, so this one 6 key design principles. So you didn't include a paragraph explaining your design mnemonic, but I'm going to give you a chance to do that later on, so that'll be your chance. Alex Anderson, contrast, flow, contrast, balance, contrast, repetition. So I think what you probably did is copied and pasted your text blocks, Alex, and you just copied and pasted the contrast text block and you forgot to type in what it really is. So I'm not sure exactly which ones are supposed to be alignment, repetition, and let's see, you got balance, flow, contrast. It looks like you forgot emphasis and alignment and repetition. I'm assuming the chairs are repetition. Oh, there's repetition, I'm sorry. So I guess contrast is repeated 3 times, so alignment and emphasis are the 2 that I think you just probably forgot to type in. I would assume that, well, it's hard to say because the fish could be contrast, so could the zebra. So I would assume that the bridge graphic is probably either emphasis or alignment. Probably alignment, because it seems like it's a very centered alignment scheme. And emphasis, I'm not really sure if it's the zebra or the fish. So make sure you proofread your own work before you hand it in. If it has to be a little late, especially on these homework, that's okay. Just give me an email, let me know, let me know that you needed a little more time, and it's not a big deal. Okay, I'd rather that you proofread it thoroughly and get everything right than turn it in on time and be a little sloppy. Okay, I would have repeated some of the colors in the graphics into the headline. We've talked about this a little bit. I would keep a consistent logic to your captions. Right now, the flow is centered on top of the graphic it represents. Contrast is on the right. Repetition is above the picture centered. The contrast of the fish is lower right. The contrast of the bridge is upper left. There's no consistency. So if you want to look professional, that should all be extremely consistent. Okay. Your name is the same type and the same font size as the captions, and that's an issue of emphasis and contrast. You want to make your name bigger, okay? Because it looks like a caption right now. Bring the 6 design principles higher, and choose a font that somehow relates to more of the pictures. I'm not really sure that it relates to what's going on there. Overall, it looks like you have architectural themes along with nature themes. And somehow, think about what the viewer is looking at graphically, and try to relate your graphic images to the font and the headline, both in font choice and color. Okay, got to bring a lot of those colors in. And then finally, it looks you did a nice job aligning the 5 picture graphics on the right to each other. Top, left, bottom, right. They're flush. You see that? And that was really smart. But the top of the bridge photo is a little bit low, and I know that you wanted to make room for your name, but you got plenty of room on top. I would have made the bridge photo a lot bigger so that the top of it flushes with all the other photos, and then maybe crop the left side of it a little bit, so that the margin is even. And you got plenty of room to crop that. And then you could have brought the 6 design principles headlines higher and put your name underneath it a little bit bigger. Okay, 6 design principles. Heather Balk. Contrast, alignment, repetition, balance, emphasis, flow. And the words that relate are clutch, accelerate, reverse, brake, engine, fuel. This was easy to find something to relate some words to. All I have to do is remember my favorite car and the main aspects of it. To drive, you need the clutch and the brake to go forward or in reverse. Of course, you need an engine and feel to make the vehicle move too. The best part is that your tires need to be balanced and aligned to flow correctly. The emphasis is that Dodge is the best vehicle out there, in contrast to Chevy or Ford. I can repeat that all day. I love that you related the color of the main graphic to all else. That was something that I'm harping on a lot in this class. You took that blue-gray color and you repeated it into your name, and that was really nicely done. And then you made the rest, the 6 Design Principles headline, and then the other text elements, a darker blue to create contrast, which is really well done. But it still relates to the car because it does seem like a very cool gray, okay, very blue. If you pick it with a sample eyedrop tool on some of the darker areas, it probably would be more of a blue color. So that was really good. It looks like your margins, top, left, and right, are very even, and you got a little more margin on the bottom. I love the way you centered everything like that. You aligned everything except the body copy, a centered alignment. I would have probably chose centered alignment for the body copy as well. When you have short chunks of text, you can do a centered alignment, and by repeating that centered alignment scheme in the body copy as well, you'd be even reinforcing an overall look to create unity, okay? And it would also reinforce the idea that in the center of everything is the car, okay? I would have probably aligned center your name to the text box, which is the body copy. Now when I say align center, there's different ways to think about alignment, obviously, but one is the center point of one object aligns to a center point of another object, okay, either horizontally or vertically. So in this case it would be vertically aligned. That's what I would have done, and that way it would have created even more exact alignment centered. So very cool. I like this one a lot. I like that the font you chose for the 6 Design Principles text kind of looks like the car in a way. The curves, it's kind of a beefy, muscle looking car, probably very fun to drive, very fast, and but playful at the same time. And that's exactly what the font looks like in the headline. So very cool. And you've chose a font that's contrast to that for the contrast alignment clutch accelerate text, and then chose, and then either did like an outline with a white fill. And I have a little bit of problem with how thick the outline is, though. I think you could have made that a little bit thinner. You can see how on the A for alignment and accelerate, for example, the outline kind of bleeds into itself, creating like more of a darker chunk. That looks a little unprofessional. So if you're going to do that, in this case, I don't have a problem with that because maybe you're relating to the idea of air and open, but I would have made the outline point size a lot thinner, okay? And that would have created a lot more open area around, and that would have drawn your eyes more towards the very center, and it would have reinforced the idea of the 6 Design Principle, your name and the car and the body copy as one big centered object kind of relating to each other. The contrast, clutch, alignment, accelerate would have still been important, as far as emphasis, because it's so big in size, but it would have also created an overall look more airy, like an open road or something like that, but good job. Okay, the Avett Brothers, Friday. Repetition reggae. The chorus is reggae, is so repetitive, so I now can associate the two. Alignment, Avett Bro. In our house, our favorite band is the Avett Brothers, and is also the name of our golden doodle. Contrast Charlie was one of my childhood dogs that to this day I have never forgotten about. Not the actual Charlie, but you get the idea. Emphasis eat. I have a 5-year-old son, so I'm always emphasizing to eat his fruits and vegetables. Flow Friday. Every week I am just trying to flow through the work week to get to Friday. I never forget about Friday, so I think I'll remember flow. Balance beer. I'm an absolute beer nerd and also sell quite a bit of it in my line of work. The perfect beer usually has a perfect malt and hop balance. Okay, very cool. Now I'm going to have here a couple issues of alignment and I think balance. You see how there's this big space between the word Friday and your caption and body copy? You know, you want to create a consistent space between your captions. I'm going to call the caption the text that relates to the photo, okay? Because I mean, normally just the contrast Charlie would be the caption and the other part would be more of a description, but the way you've merged them together like that as one, I'm going to just call them all captions, okay? So you've got like an even space or margin between the repetition caption and the picture of Bob Marley and the emphasis caption and the eat picture, but the balance caption bleeds over into the beer, the contrast Charlie caption is bigger, and the caption between Flow Friday and the word Friday is huge. Okay, and the same with the Avid Brothers and the Avid Brothers text. Okay, so you want those to be the same width. Okay, you want to create. You don't want to emphasize what you don't want to emphasize. You know, in this case, Friday seems more important because it seems bigger and centered like that, and it doesn't seem to relate visually to its caption. Okay, you want a consistent placement of and spacing between captions and headers so that it creates consistent flow. Your eyes know exactly what pictures they belong to, okay? And also it creates some kind of a visual flow that you don't want when you don't do it accurately. You know, your eyes kind of wander where you don't want them to in this case because of Friday has all that space underneath it and it's so centered and big like that, okay? This is not a universal rule, but when you have a grouping of graphics and some have a background like the dog and Bob Marley and some have a white background like the other ones, I think it's a good idea to either make them all have white backgrounds or to give them all a border, okay? And again, that'll create a unity and it will help with the idea of connecting captions and the graphic it goes to, and it also create a better alignment, okay? So you could have made like a black stroke around the three that have a white background, okay? A black outline, and then create like an even margin between that picture and its caption. Probably could have made the pictures a little smaller to make more room for the text so the text doesn't seem so crammed, okay? And another reason to do a black outline around your pictures is then you can better see the rectangle, and it's a really good idea when you're using a series of pictures that all have the same or should have all the same weight of importance. In other words, not one of these design principle pictures is more important than the other. I mean, they're all relate to each other, they're all equally important. So I think it's usually a good idea to make them the same size. So you start with a width or height and then you can crop, okay? So, you know, just decide what's really important. You know, like you can take off some of the dog, for example. You know, like you don't need to show the entire tail or the entire feet. You could have cropped some of the bottom of the Bob Marley picture, you know, etc. Okay, so you create like one, you know, figure out what one size will be and then crop as necessary, make them all the same size, then you can line them up in a logical way. You know, like you could have top aligned, bottom aligned, right aligned, etc. And then you tuck in the text in a very logical way, the captions. That'll give your compositions a very professional look. Again, I would bring in some color, probably in the bold part of the caption that relates to the image. You got plenty of color going on, and I would have repeated that in the caption. Again, it's a way of repeating the connection between the caption and the graphic. and you didn't have a headline here. The headline should be 6 design principles, and that's what's probably most important, because that's that's what the headline is. So you didn't include that at all. Okay, so that would be another reason to make all the photographics a lot smaller, to make more room for that. Okay. All right, 6 design principles, Bridget Harms. I have worked in the restaurant industry for almost 4 years now. It wasn't until about a year and a half ago that I started waitressing. Since then, waitressing has been practically my life. I don't have much time for anything else but work. If I didn't enjoy my work environment, I definitely wouldn't still be doing what I'm doing now. I currently work at 2 local restaurants in Ashland. My favorite of the 2 is called Hugo's Pizza. This restaurant is family owned, and my managers and coworkers are like family to me. We're a close-knit bunch, and it's always a good time working there. I used Hugo's as a reference for these 6 design principles. Excuse me, my throat is kind of scratchy today, so excuse me if my voice is off a little bit. Hugo is a restaurant bar. The bar is a small, yet quite popular with our customers. There is a variety of alcohol and beer available. Although the restaurant is called Hugo's Pizza, we serve a full menu of food. This restaurant is a very popular pizza place in my area. Some refer to it as the best pizza in town. The restaurant also has a unique, welcoming front entrance that brings our loyal customers in daily. All right, very cool. So one thing I would do when you have a short chunk of text like this, for clarity's sake, you want to make sure that you're emphasizing with bold and color part of the text that relates to that main graphic. Because in this case it's not exactly clear. I mean, flow, pizza starts with P, flow starts with F. So it's a little bit confusing, like one has to read it to try to figure it out. And so you can give the viewer more clues by emphasizing whatever it is. So if I look at this closely, Hugo's is a restaurant bar. So I'm assuming bar is for balance, and that's clear. The bar is a small yet quite popular with our customers. There is a variety of alcohol and beer available. So I'm assuming alcohol is for alignment. So I would have made the word alcohol bold, and maybe like a color that's going on the graphic. Okay. Although the restaurant is called Hugo's Pizza, we serve a full menu. Okay, so I'm assuming that full menu is for flow. But it's really not that clear. So I would have made the words full menu, again, bold, and maybe like the color of the pepperoni or something. Very popular pizza. Best restaurant in town. The restaurant is popular. Again, so repetition, I guess I'm not really sure how R repetition relates to pizza. So in other words, I'm a little confused about some of these mnemonics, like exactly how it relates. I'm sure it makes perfect sense to you. So to make that clear to the viewer, you would emphasize, by contrast, the words in the body copy that relate, and that would give a much better meaning. Okay? I would have repeated the color too in the captions themselves. Really nice job though aligning everything to margins all the way around. Really nice centered alignment scheme on the body copy and byline. Good hierarchy between the headline, byline, and body copy. You've got a fairly even margin between the captions and the pictures, although it's not exactly the same. So I would make sure that's exactly the same. Again, when you got 6 pictures like this that are almost exactly the same size, I would make them exactly the same size. Maybe make a black outline around the pizza if you get a clear background like that, and that would relate them as 6 squares, even more so. And you see how the emphasis, that box is more square and the pizza box is more rectangle, more horizontal. I would crop the emphasis probably to make it the same size. They should all probably be the exact same size. You could have cropped the bottom of the booze picture a little bit, and that probably would have made everything kind of more rectangular and horizontal, and make them all the exact same size. Okay. And lastly, I probably would have increased the line spacing, the leading a little bit more in your body copy so that the bottom of the body copy block is aligned to the left side better. You see how it's higher than the contrast and alignment text? Those little details make a big difference, okay? Alright, 6 Design Principles, Sarah Kessler. I was having trouble thinking of a mnemonic device to help remember, but it was mentioned to relate to an event or object that you may already be familiar with. I then chose to think of an event that is super cheesy, but very recent to me, which would be my engagement. Well, I don't think that's cheesy at all. I spent time placing words that related to the engagement to match up with the 6 Design Principles. I used rejoice for repetition, as the event was basically me crying a lot of happy tears, and flowers for flow. This one was hard, but I felt I could use them as flow because I was surrounded by beautiful flowers. Sure, absolutely. That could remind me of how smoothly things flowed that afternoon. Next, I used calm for contrast, as I was able to enjoy the contrasting flowers. Amazed was used for alignment in a rather gushy way, but definitely a way I will be able to remember it. I think you get an extra space after amazed. Finally, Brittany was my friend who my fiancé recruited to help me with the situation, so I used her for balance and the actual event of the engagement for emphasis. They're described beneath their pictures with reasons as to why the words and pictures make it easier for me to understand and remember the 6 Design Principles. Okay, very cool. No, I think that's a great idea. Certainly a day you'll never forget, and that's exactly what I was trying to have you do. Nice. Once I realized what was happening, I rejoiced repeatedly. Flowers help with creating a fan easy way. I think you misspelled. You guys make sure you check your copy, print it out if you have to, read it over so that typos, extra spaces like that, I'm not always going to be here to check that. I became calm with the contrasting colors of my favorite flowers. I was amazed that the timing aligned well with our lives finding new jobs and graduating college. Brittany helped balance out our suspicion that something about to happen. There was a lot of emphasis on the element of surprise when my fiancé proposed. Okay, that's really cool. No, that's fantastic. So now I like that you made the words that are going to pop in your memory that relate to the graphic italic, contrasting, repeatedly, etc. I would have also made them bold and maybe included the color that relates to the graphic. Again, if there's a white background, either try to choose pictures that have either all colored backgrounds or all white backgrounds, and not a mix. And if you do have to do a mix like this, I would recommend doing a box, an outline over the rest of them, and make them all the same size. Again, I'm going to harp that over and over again. I think I would have chose a font for your headline that relates more to what's going on that day. You said you were surrounded by flowers. And it was an outdoor event, where you filled with tears and joy. I would have maybe did a search for flower font or tears emotional font, something that has a little more curvilinear and more interesting sort of outdoor feel to it. Like the text you chose for 6 Design Principles headline is kind of boxy, and I know you get boxes for the graphics, but still it doesn't seem like it's rejoiceful enough. And you chose a purple color, but it doesn't seem to relate to what's going on overall. Mostly I see yellow, so I probably would have picked a dark yellow color, because you've got a lot of rejoicing, you got a lot of sunflowers outdoor, a sun shape. Okay, so something that just repeats the theme better, like it was an outdoor proposal and you were really surprised, filled with emotion. Okay. One thing too, you got a lot of orphans going on. When there's one word at the end of a paragraph chunk, like flowers help me with, you get boards on its own, sunflowers is on its own. That doesn't look professional. Again, you can move the text box closer, tighter left and right, and that'll help with that. That's one way. Or make the font size a little bit different. Good job though with your captions are tight underneath your graphics. You got a tighter margin between the caption and the graphics on the bottom two than on the top four. Try to make those all exactly the same, okay? And then finally, I would have made the line spacing on the paragraph a little more so that it aligns on the bottom a little bit better, okay? Okay, 6 design principles, Jared's memory mnemonic. I used the family theme to represent my memory mnemonic. I started with repetition. In my family world, no matter what happens, the rent is always due. Next, the fiances, I think I'm still thinking of the last one. Next, the finances have to be in order for there to be a flow to the family life. Third, there'd be children. The best part of being a family is raising children, and they give life contrast. Fourth is adults, representing alignment. I felt the adults have to keep everything in line. Budget is next. There has to be a budget for the family to fill all their needs. Finally, entertainment is the emphasis of why we pay the bills and have the budget. Having a great tie with my family is the best. All right, very cool. Again, same thing here. I probably would have made. First of all, you have an issue of emphasis. 6 design principles is your headline, and you made that one of the smallest parts of the entire. It's kind of tucked so small up there you can barely see it. You got plenty of room on the bottom to bring everything down. So I would have spread your headline all the way across the top and filled it with a color that relates to those colors that are going on in your graphics, okay? Also, I would have not made usually you don't want to make body copy bold like that. Bold is used to emphasize certain words, certain ideas. And so what I would have done is made your body copy not bold, and then emphasized the words adults, for example, representing alignment, bold that, and then bring in a color, that is part of that graphic, okay? This is a repeat for me, but when you're using blocks of graphics in the way we're doing here, where each one has to show the exact same importance, try to make them the same size, okay? At the very least the same height, but I would crop to make them exactly the same size and then align them in a logical way. I'm not sure why you did 4 on top and 2 on the bottom like that. So you go 3 and 3, and then figure out a logical way for your captions. You could center them under the photos. That's one of the most logical ways, and create an exactly even margin between the caption and the photo, okay? Right now they're all over the place. Like finances has this huge wide space between it and the photo it represents, and rent is a lot closer, okay? Those should all be exactly the same. It's an issue of alignment and emphasis. You don't want to emphasize what you don't want to emphasize, okay? And it creates, by aligning them logically, and it creates a professional look and easy readability, flow. You also want to make sure the space between the photographics is even, okay? And that's another alignment issue where you're distributing evenly. So I would have done 3 on top, 3 on bottom, make them all the same size. I think I've showed you in a couple of videos now how to crop. You know how to scale, and crop is very simple. Just make them the exact same size by scaling them and cropping them, and then distribute them evenly, okay? 3 and 3. And again, maybe bring in color into the caption that relates to that graphic, and then I think you can bold the caption. You kind of reversed it. You did bold for the body copy, and you did not do bold for the captions. It should be just the opposite, okay? Oh, sorry, I skipped around here accidentally. Okay, 6 Design Principles by Tamara Pakoak. Sorry, I think I've butchered your name before. Sorry about that. Now, my first sort of impression is that the headline really relates very well to the illustrations, which seem line arty, not even line arty, they seem like really nice sketches. And so you chose a font that looks like it was handwritten, like a sketch. So very, very good idea there. And you've also went with the idea of grayscale throughout, okay, except for the body copy, which you made a color. Sitting in my living room from my favorite spot, I see the ledge I always end up placing my earrings, and the other couch my husband has claimed as his own. I can look across the room to the flowers that stay fresh all year and see the aquarium we haven't given up, even though the last fish has gone. Next to this is the record player my husband uses to play his prized record collection. And finally, to my book collection that I keep adding to that no longer fits on the bookcase. Awesome. Books, record player, aquarium, earrings, couch, flowers. Same thing here. I think I would have made the body copy black. And I would have, if you wanted to insert a color for emphasis, I would have inserted a color in the body copy just on the words that are your mnemonic. Again, same thing. So in other words, all else is black and gray except only the words that represent your mnemonic principles. And then what you're doing then is just a very quick reference, a very quick scan to those words. You're emphasizing those words. You're creating a verbal and visual flow by contrast. Okay? You have a nice even margin between your captions and your photos. That's awesome. And it's logical. They're centered on the bottom of the top row and they're centered on the top of the bottom row. When you do a text wrap like that, you want to make sure that there's more of a margin between the text and the graphic. Okay, that's too tight. It's sort of emphasizing what you don't want to emphasize. It creates bad flow and it doesn't look professional. If you're gonna align the pictures the way you did, where they're butted up against each other, I would have probably just butted them all up against each other to make one overall graphic. You could have still done a text wrap, but then I would have moved the captions for aquarium, record player, and books to the bottom, and then I would have moved the earrings, couch, and flowers captions to the top, so that you're creating a nice unified graphic as one thing and not two, because you're almost there as it is. So that's one recommendation I would have had. You get plenty of room there. You could have moved the design principles and your name text up a little. Okay? Other than that, I really don't have a lot of criticisms. You got a nice margin all the way around. That's really even. That's nice. And overall, I think the choice of drawings like that and the font choice, which looks like a hand-drawn word, is a really good idea. So nice job. Six design principles, Patrick Sierra. My memory mnemonic device for the 6 design elements of design. I'm sorry, I'm having a bad reading day today, excuse me. My memory device for the 6 elements of design are derived from basic factors of winemaking. Wine is something I absolutely love and have worked in the business of wine became. My memory device for the 6 elements of design are derived from important factors of winemaking. Wine is something I absolutely love, have worked in the business of wine, becoming and became a certified wine. My mnemonic device for the 6 elements of design are derived from important factors of winemaking. Wine is something I absolutely love, have worked in the business of wine, becoming and became a certified sommelier. When considering making wine, or even drinking wine for that matter, these are things to consider when purposefully tasting. The 6 associations I have made are emphasis, elevation, contrast, climate, repetition, ripeness, flow, farming practice, balance, biodynamic, alignment, aspect. Okay, that's a great idea. These are arguably some of the most critical factors in making wine. Elevation and climate are of the utmost importance, as wine seems to prosper best as heights of 500 to 1500 feet in most parts of the world and in moderate or continental climates. Ripeness is an obvious important factor as well, as it determines when the grape should be harvested and how to know it is fully ripe. In modern days farming practices, used are becoming more and more talked about in wine. The best wines are hand harvested with minimal intervention in the vineyard. Biodynamic farming overlaps with the farming flow, and it is important to consider as it is meant to give the best rendition of terroir. Further, biodynamic practices are sustainable practices to our planet, for our planet. Lastly, aspect is very important in farming, as in many areas vineyards must have south or southeast exposure to maximize sun exposure to ripen the grapes. I love the idea, and it's very cool that that's what you are passionate about. I find that absolutely fascinating. I think that the body copy is pretty small. It's a little bit hard to read, at least where I am. I know this wasn't a print assignment, but if it was a print assignment, the test would be how easy it is to read on paper. For me, I had to move up and get pretty close to the screen, and maybe that's just my bad eyesight. But I think you could have probably made the graphic images a little bit smaller and the body copy a little bit bigger. It looks like the margins are not very good. You've got like a margin on the bottom and the top that seem logical, but then on the left and the right, it's super close on the left and right. Okay, so make sure that you pick a margin in Publisher. Okay, just pick something, and then when you're laying out your elements, butt everything up evenly against the margins. Okay, that's something you can do without even thinking about it, and that's going to create a nice even margin around everything. Okay, and that's you're not going to emphasize what you don't want to emphasize. You're not going to make the text hard to read, which is flow, and it's going to be a very clear, clean, and logical alignment. Okay, I see what you did by most of the pictures are horizontal. So again, when they're very close to being the same size like that, I would make them exactly the same size. And it looks like you did on the bottom and then the upper left. Then there's that one picture that's square like that. And I realized that you tucked in the headline and byline to kind of balance that out a little bit, and I guess that's okay. But I think I would have made the 6 design principles text. So I would have stretched it out so that it fills the left margin to right, like think of the right side of the contrast picture as a margin, and think of the left side of the emphasis picture as a margin. I would have stretched or tracked the 6 design principles so it fills that space better. Okay, you got plenty of room to do it, especially if you would have made the picture smaller. Again, same thing as I've been saying. Bold the words in your body copy that are the key words. Bring color into the captions that relate to the graphic more. Maybe even make the captions bold. You don't need your name bold, okay? You need the captions to be bold, because I think that's more important in this case. Good job adding a consistent black outline around all of the graphics. That's logical. And I love the pictures too. Very cool. And it's very, very neat that this is something that you're passionate about, and that's going to help you relate to the principles. Okay, so good job. All right, 6 design principles. Kimberly Susky. Nice font choice. Definitely relates to the bat. Anyways, a little bit dripping and Halloweeny. Although it's not as playful as some of those other images, but I like that you were thinking about choosing a font that is not just your average boring font. So good job there. You didn't really explain any of this, so I'll just have to hopefully learn more later on. But contrast is cat, balance is bat, repetition is bunny, emphasis is elephant, flow is frog, and alignment is alligator. I would have wanted to read a little about why you chose these particular images. Is it just completely random, or are these particularly important for you for some reason? You got big margins on the left compared to the right. Okay, those should be even. And the same, you got a margin on the top that's bigger than the margin on the bottom. I mean, at least the way you've arranged the text. The Kimberly, your name Kimberly, looks like it's way too close to the bottom and than the 6 design principles text. Okay, so just think about alignment in those terms. Also, I think your captions need to be a lot bigger, and maybe bring the color of the graphic into the caption. Okay. And again, if you're going to do, and I like that you have consistency here. You know, all your photos have a white background, so you don't need a black outline around them, and that's fine, except the bunny. You know, that's the only one where it gets cut off like that on the top. You know, it bleeds off the top like that. Okay, so I think I would have tried to pick a bunny picture that shows the whole bunny, and that would have been, I think, a lot more logical. I guess it's a verbal flow or a visual flow issue. You know, you kind of get stuck there wondering, okay, why is this the only one that gets cut off and nothing else does? And I think I would have aligned the captions a little bit better, more centered underneath each graphic. Okay, you pick an exact, sometimes they are, but sometimes they look a little shifted. You know, you pick an exact center, you know, and sometimes, you know, the box containing your graphic with a white background doesn't have even margins itself. You know, so in other words, the center should be, you know, the center of the bat, should be the center of the frog, the center of the elephant, etc. You know what I mean? And you can do that by eye if you have to. Okay.